You're listening to the Fan to Fan podcast, and today we're talking about the lighthearted topics of entrepreneurship and parenting and fandom. But don't worry, it's a lot of fun. Well worth listening to, not super heavy. So it's all good. Here we go. Welcome to the Fan to Fan podcast. This is your host, Bernie Gonzalez, and I am here with, all right, Justin, here we go. Podcaster, graphic designer, blogger, gamer, xenophile, otaku, artist, MC, husband, father, Justin Williams. Justin, what's going on?
What's up, man? Life is fantastic. I had a pretty good weekend, man. How was yours?
It was good, and this is nice because this is our second go-round for some unforeseen technical issues the first time around. This is nice that we are crystal clear, talking to each other, and like we just said a little bit off mic a few seconds before, you are all the way in Alaska. I am in the Midwesties where it's young and restless, so it is nice to know that technology can bring us together when we have this much distance between us.
Amen to that. It's not all Matrix and Terminator. Sometimes it actually helps us to communicate with each other a little bit, especially when the Wi-Fi signal is on point. So, looks like this is going to be a good recording, man, and I'm all for it. I'm excited.
So, Justin, you've got the Super Tangent podcast, 10 episodes in. You discuss everything from Ghostbusters, Doctor Strange, All Dogs Go to Heaven, the Nintendo Switch, virtual reality, designing, parenting, entrepreneurship. What brought you to start the podcast?
A lot of things, really. My wife, Allie Williams, who is the creator of Allie Williams Co. She's a coach who helps startup entrepreneurs become virtual assistants. She's also a fellow podcaster herself. She just started doing that. She's a graphic designer as well. She's been on this tip for a very long time, even before we had our daughter in 2015. It's something that she's always wanted to do. And so when we did have our daughter, Diana, in 2015, she decided to quit her full-time job and just stay home and just blog. And that was all she did. And for at least a good year there, she wasn't making any money. You know, she was just on a grind, just on a hustle. And she, in between, being a mom and being an entrepreneur, being a blogger, she didn't really do anything else. And so she put a year of time into that with no return on investment. And then after that, she kind of expanded her brand, her business a little bit, got some money. I got a new full-time job during that time. And I realized she'd always been trying to convince me, like, maybe this is something you should do. I know you like to talk about nerdy stuff. You like to write. Like, maybe you should try to do what I do, since you work at a job, you're not sure you want to do that as a career for the rest of your life. You could be at home with me and the girl, consider that. And so, I always like to write, about this kind of stuff too. I wrote a couple of articles for Laser Time podcast, their website, and it got some pretty good reception. And then I decided, after that, I was like, you know what, I can actually maybe I could actually do this. Maybe I actually communicate with people, not just here in Anchorage, not just my friends, but people all over the world, who want to trade off ideas and hear the kind of stuff that I have to say. And so once I started doing that and started thinking in that way, I reached out to a couple of people. I took some courses, and before you know it, boom, I 10 podcasts in. It just kind of happened like that. And so I've been doing this. The launch of Super Tangent was January 15th. So I haven't been doing this long, but I anticipate it'll be around for a while.
And from the episodes that I've listened to, it seems like there's an energy, there's an enjoyment in what you're doing. So, and I think what really struck a chord for me is the fact that you were layering all these things that were obviously important to you, things that you were passionate about, not just video game soundtracks, but also the idea of being an ethical designer and what it's like to be a father, the ideas of manhood, and bringing it all into one conversation. And those are the things that I especially appreciate in your episodes, because you're essentially saying all of these things are on the same continuity. The discussions I have with my wife, with my daughter, with other creative folks, it's all put together instead of separating it all. It's just, I think it's a terrific way of approaching a podcast because it's real. It's a discussion on life. It reflects how life is. It's not necessarily segmented. It's all put together.
Absolutely. And I think that's the way that life should be. It should be completely cohesive, you know? And I figure that, like, without, letting the world know my, deepest, darkest secret, like, I want to be vulnerable to my audience. I want to be someone who's on the same wavelength, the same stage, essentially. Like, I don't want to talk to people. I don't want, this conversation to be a monologue. I want it to be a dialogue. I want it to be a bilateral covenant where I talk to you, you talk to me, people listen, I listen to you. And all of these things, all these little chunks of life, it's so cohesive, really. Like, I don't have to think too hard to make sure everything fits. Like, if it doesn't fit, I probably don't want to talk about it. But for me, in my life, and just the way things are going now with my wife and my daughter, with being a lifetime, geek, nerd, whatever you want to call it, like, these are all the things that I'm super, super passionate about. And like you mentioned, the Ghostbusters episode, that was my second podcast where I just kind of broke it down by the kind of values that it has as far as what I talk about in my podcast, manhood, entrepreneurship, and entertainment, and all those values put together. And it was literally the easiest podcast I'd ever had to do, because Ghostbusters is my favorite movie of all time. I could talk about that 24/7, 365 anyway, but breaking it down to ideas that fit the podcast like 100%, it was just super easy. And so, like, I want people to understand, like, if you're one thing, you don't have to be isolated. I want everyone to be involved. This is a huge cohesive seminar between all sorts of people. And so, without being too specific or too broad, I'm hoping this podcast will be able to bring people together and unite people who maybe didn't think they were, I don't know, quote unquote, allowed in. You know what I'm saying? And so I just want to be very attentive to different people in different areas of life, and very careful to make sure to be realistic, not to be disingenuous and saying, "Oh, I'm a nerd," just to pander to that nerd audience when I know I'm not really that. You know what I'm saying? The best thing that I can do is just be genuine, just be real, and be passionate and energetic about these kinds of things, because we're not dumb. If we're listeners, people can sniff, disingenuity, 3 miles away. Like, we know when it's not real. Real recognize real. So,
and that's something that goes beyond your podcast, and I see it in the blog too. I mean, where you talk about getting sleep, getting together a family calendar, planning vacations, budgeting, the idea of American manhood and what it means to you. I mean, that's the real. That's putting it out there. And like you said, it's not necessarily your deepest, darkest secret. That's not necessarily what it's about, but you're letting people know, what, budgeting is important. When you have a family, you have to look at priorities, and you have to have some sense of organization, because that's important to you as a person, as a husband, as a father, and you're putting it out there in the same conversation that you're talking about Doctor Strange, because all these things are important, just maybe on different levels, but it's still a part of who you are.
I mean, and let's be real, like, I'm still paying back student loans. I'm still, I'm climbing out of debt. I just paid off 4 credit cards with my wife, which is a huge milestone for us, I mean, it's these tiny little things that allow us to do blogging and podcasting, and to spend that extra time, with our daughter, and do these extra things with her. So, we're kind of in the mindset that, either we're going to control our money, or money's going to control us, and so we have to factor that into our everyday life. Otherwise, things are really going to go south, and then, whoops, we can't afford internet one month, and so I can't do my podcast. It's like these little intricate breakdowns. And so, and that stuff is just real, man. Entrepreneurship, I mean, I hate to say that money is the most important thing in the world. I don't believe that. I don't practice that. But for an entrepreneur, for you and for me, that's something we have to pay attention to. And even if we weren't doing this entrepreneurship online, money's still important when you have a family, when you have a wife, you have kids. And so I want my listeners to know that, look, dude, like, I'm concerned about money just like you. But if you want to get on the hustle that, like, I'm on, this is something that's extremely important. I hope that, when I get on the mic, I'm talking to the right people who are willing to be influenced by healthy behaviors, by actionable steps to do whatever it is in life that they want to do. Because if you don't, you will be stuck at that job that you hate forever. And when you do that, you don't have time for your wife and kids. You don't have time for your husband. You don't have time to do stuff like podcasting, because you're too worried about making money, and that's just a terrible way to live. And I want people to enjoy themselves and do whatever it is that makes them happy and joyful, because that's just it's just so real, and that's life, man. Like going to work, having a 9 to 5, and that's it. That's being alive, but that's not living. You know what I'm saying?
Oh yeah, absolutely. That's the livelihood. That's not the life.
Yeah, and it's like that's not the American dream. Like that is horrible. That's a system, and we gotta get out of that system, man. There's so many alternative, healthy paths for people to take, and I just want to be on this podcast to let people know, like, yo, if I can do this, you can do this. If you want to start something beautiful, you can do it. It's easy. And the best way to do it is to start listening to podcasts like yours, like Fan to Fan, like Super Tangent, like all the other podcasts out there that are genuine, that are real, and that just speak to just normal people.
I'll say my buddy Pete, who has a podcast with his friend Jonathan, and they have the So Bad It's podcast. They talk about pop culture stuff, but he always says that the podcast was a bridge to connect him with like-minded people.
Word.
And that's what's exactly, same exact reason why we're on this conversation. That's why Pete and I have had these conversations that I've been lucky to have with folks that I've never met, folks that I haven't connected with in a while. It's a privilege to be able to have those conversations and to be able to talk about things that we're all passionate, things that we love, but hopefully do it in a genuine, real way where it's about things that we enjoy, things that we've enjoyed probably for some time, and then through podcasting now have the ability to share with other people and find other people to say, you like these movies, you like Star Wars, you like Star Trek, you like comics, you like video games, you like model making, cool, so do I. And then I found these other terrific people that talk about the same thing, and then we continue that conversation. And hopefully between our shows, we can keep that conversation going and bring more people in and be like, I think there's that 50-50 split. Podcasters are probably on one side saying, hey, listen to my show. And then you'll have the other side of people. And I remember this from a Kevin Smith quote where he talked about how he said everyone should have a podcast. Everyone get out there, say what you have to say it in the way that you want to say it, because we could be talking about comics, but we could be talking about it in a different way, because obviously we're coming at it from two very different perspectives that have still a lot of similarities.
That's so cool. Like, that's so true. Like, all this is just a bridge. It's just a platform to outreach. You know what I'm saying? So it's like, no matter what the content is, someone out there needs to hear what you're saying. There's so many people out there that like don't want to talk, they don't want to use their voice, they don't want to get in front of a camera or whatever, because they're scared that they're going to either let people down or that people are going to let that person down. Like, oh, they may not like my content and stuff. Like, and I went through that too in January. Like it was like the last few weeks, actually, like right before Super Tangent was going to launch on January 15th of this year, I started to get this imposter syndrome. Like, maybe I shouldn't be doing this because so and so is doing it better, or this person is doing it better.
Sure.
And my wife really had to like just like shut me up and convince me that like, look, everybody goes through this when they're launching something dope. Don't worry about it. It's going to be great. The right people are going to support you, and you're going to find your support system. And so that was really
Wives are good about bringing perspective. That's very, very true.
Yeah, absolutely. And so, that was really good for me to know that like, yeah, I'm not alone in this, and that all these podcasts, the quote unquote better ones, the quote unquote starter ones, are like, no, we're all in this together. We're all talking about the same thing, like you said, in different ways. We provide different perspectives. Not everybody liked Iron Fist. I like to get in that conversation and talk about why not everyone liked, the most recent, like, Ninja Turtles movie or whatever. Like, we all need to be able to share respectfully our opinions and our thoughts on stuff and uplift one another, man. And being a part of this podcast community just in general on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, whatever, it's like I have never been involved with a group of people who have been so strangely supportive and loving and caring. It's like, I don't have 1 million subscribers, but I have people who will answer my questions on Facebook when I'm facing a technical difficulty, a marketing question, I need a solution to something. It's like, it's just so dope to be part of a collectivist society of online entrepreneurs, essentially, especially since we live in a time that is so individualistic. It's all about me, hustle, hustle, hustle. I don't want your help. I don't give out help. It's like, I feel like what we do and what we're involved in is kind of like the opposite of that. And that is just such a good commentary to have for business in general. Like, you know what I'm saying? And family, it's just such a positive thing, and it outpours in every little crevice of life, you know? And so I really love being a part of this community, dude. Like, I didn't know if I was going to like other people who were doing what I'm doing. And I haven't met one person that has just been disingenuous, who has just been like, oh, you know, has their own agenda and just wants to stomp on toes to get to wherever they need to be. It's like, I don't know, man. There's just so many good people out there. It's really a family affair, and I really like it, man. I love being a podcaster.
Justin and I will continue our conversation in just a few seconds. But in the meantime, remember, you can find the Fan to Fan podcast at www.fanpodcast.com. Facebook, just search Fan to Fan Podcast. That's FAN, the number 2, FAN. Or on Twitter, at Fan to Fan Podcast. I'd love to hear from you, so reach out, send the message, and let me know what you think of the show. Thanks.
And now, on with the show.
All right, so I'm going to use family as a nice segue into our emails when we were kind of planning out the episode.
Yeah.
And we were kind of talking about the idea of fandom, of being a fan of something, and sharing that with a son, a daughter, a nephew, a niece, a foster child. And I think it's fair to say, especially you as a parent, that you are essentially in a position of power in a way where you can demonstrate a lot of values, principles to your daughter, good, bad, or ugly, and what you share and how you share it, when you share it. All those things can make something feel important to a child, and they can get excited about it or not. So the things that we love, that we grew up with, like comics and movies and what have you, those are the things that we love, that we talk about on our shows. Yeah. And I kind of wanted to dig into that and find out, especially, you know, you as a father, as a podcaster, as an entrepreneur, as a marketer, you know, what that means. Because I know as we were emailing, you'd mentioned fatherhood is a circus. And when you have these traditions, you want to pass them along. You want to share those deep, nerdy passions with your children, your siblings, cousins, nieces. But it can be difficult. And, you know, just like your love for Ghostbusters and Gundam, I think, it's a easy way to start with. It's kind of like, all right, tell me about your parents. You know, the old psychologist question, you know, tell me about your mother. Tell me about your father, because I think that's a good place to start. It's kind of like, how did you get this love for Ghostbusters? What happened, you know, along the way that brought you to this place where you're in front of a microphone professing your love for Gundam?
Right. Man, it's just so weird, because at a certain point in my life, I was just like most teenagers, I was just like, bro, my parents don't get me, dude. Like, they don't understand, boo, 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 they don't get me. And, you know, because even back then, I was just so invested into and involved in, you know, the Cartoon Network, Toonami, Adult Swim era that like really just like defined a huge chunk of my life as far as what I valued in entertainment and anime and even music. But as an adult now, I'm 27 years old, the more and more I dig into like the good stuff like that, like the really rich stuff that actually defines me. Because TV doesn't define me. It's just like you said, my parents and what they loved. Like, I was influenced by that. I didn't see it back then, but I see it now. And I think one of the biggest things that got me into, let's say, anime, you know, for instance, is my dad. You know, he's in his early 60s now. But when me and my brother and my brother's 2 years older than me, so he's going to be 30 on April 4th. But when we were like 4 and 6, respectively, my dad would always show us this VHS tape. It was a huge recording, and all the tape on it was used up, that my dad actually recorded from 1985. So I was born in 89, of course, so I wasn't live back this time. But I'd always pop in this video that my dad recorded, and I swear he recorded it for his future kids. It was nothing but cartoons. From, I think it was a Saturday morning lineup from NBC. Like, I had no idea NBC, like, even had cartoons because like I said, I was born in '89. I grew up on like Fox Kids Saturday mornings. I grew up on Kids WB, and then kind of graduated to Cartoon Network, Toonami, things like that. But I had no idea that NBC used to play a whole bunch of cartoons. They certainly don't anymore. And
this
there was
is the part where I throw in Young Buck, but continue.
Oh God. But it was just it was wild. And we would watch that every weekend. Just me and my brother would just watch this crazy lineup of all these random cartoons, like The Adventures of the Gummy Bears. There was Alvin and the Chipmunks. There was the Smurfs. Kid Video.
Still remember the Gummy Bears theme song, man.
I know,
Gummy Bears, bouncing here and there and everywhere.
Oh my God,
Life's
dude.
adventure that's beyond compare. They are the Gummy Bears.
Oh my
Imagine
God,
the
stop,
history's a
bro.
part of the. Oh yeah,
You're killing
all
me,
day.
man. I swear to God. I have an extra wedding ring. If I wasn't married, I'd mail you one, bro. Don't start with me, man. Like, but that was actually it, bro. Like, it was crazy. Like, so those theme songs got stuck in my head. Those voices got stuck in my head. The commercials in between all those shows got stuck in my head. It was ridiculous, dude. And so like there were all these like commercials for like things like GoBots and Transformers and like all this stuff that was hype back in the mid 80s, and like peanut butter and jelly Pop-Tarts and stuff. Those weird 80s stuff.
Yeah, and it was a science too, because if you got up too late, you might miss. I remember my Saturday morning tradition where I'd get up and I'd watch some of these same cartoons.
Yeah.
I was obviously a little older than you, but nonetheless, I was still watching the same cartoons.
Yeah.
And maybe I'd get up at like 6:30 or 7, and I remember, okay, I miss Camp Candy. I'm okay with that. But, when you start getting into some of the other terrific shows that were out there, those I was not willing to get past me. So I was right there with the alarm, up and at 'em bright and early, and my brother was a few years younger than me, so he would ride my coattails and come out there barely waking up, watching Heathcliff, watching Cadillacs and Dinosaurs, watching whatever was out there, because we were just like, you know what, for the next 30 minutes, we are going to be entertained, and then after that, it's just going to keep on going to like 11:30, or at least till wrestling begins.
That's right, dude. Yeah, that's exactly right. And I remember some of my earliest memories before like this VHS tape was Saturday morning like wrestling, watching that with my brother. Watching Ultimate Warrior and all these like old school cats. Jake the Snake. Like, it was like watching stuff like that. That had such strong entertainment value for me, and I think it helped shape my like social identity as a male, because I just love the fighting. I just love seeing these big, huge guys just like go at it. And like, even though it's like senseless entertainment violence, it's not even like real for the most part, it was still fun, and me and my brother were just so invested in it. And it's one of those things that early on, he and I bonded together with, like, because we just loved to watch wrestling. As we grew up and we kind of grew apart, we started to like different stuff on TV and stuff like that. But I never stopped watching anime, and I never stopped loving and valuing all the really old school like 80s cartoons and stuff like that.
And this wasn't a case where your parents were preventing you or even your brother from watching these cartoons. They were okay with you getting up, spending the better part of Saturday morning watching these cartoons, eventually getting to that point where you were probably throwing in a cassette tape to record some of them, and maybe even if you were like me and my brother, editing the commercials out, and then maybe printing out your own labels and putting your own kind of cassette cases together. But nonetheless, things that I'm sure if your parents were like mine, my parents were looking at me and my brother going, there are other things that you could probably be doing that are more valuable than putting together a label on a VHS tape for the Green with Evil 5-part Power Rangers section when they introduced the Green Ranger, and they're just like, come on, for real? Don't you guys have friends or a job that you can get on the side?
Ranger was my friend, Mom. Okay, leave me alone.
So your folks were okay with that? They were okay with you watching the cartoons and eventually maybe even buying some of the toys, the cassettes?
Yeah, they were always really frugal, and so we weren't like, they taught me a good lesson with that too. They weren't like, you're going to get everything you ask for. You're not going to get all the
You're not going to get the Green Ranger, the Dragon Zord. You may get the Pink Ranger, and you should be happy. And here's a green marker.
Yeah, I'll get the bootleg from Korea, and then you're going to use that for the next 5 years. Like that, that's my dad. Like, and honestly, that's probably part of why he had that VHS tape for us, because, we didn't buy a lot of like the VHS, like the new stuff that was coming out at that time. And me and my brother were okay with that. We kept watching this crap, and I mean, not crap, but it's like, it's so valuable to me now. It's like a gold mine. Like, I didn't even appreciate it as much then as I do now. But the thing, and here's the thing about that VHS tape too, the thing that defined my course of life, whatever, like all those shows were dope, but it was that episode of Robotech that was on that video that screwed me up for the rest of my life in the best way. It just completely messed me up because I fell in love with giant robots. Watching Robotech, it was the concept of like this really sick anime. And Robotech was the first anime I'd ever seen. And even back then, I noticed that the animation was different. The style was different from like Smurfs and Gummy Bears and all this other stuff. Like even the action cartoons like Transformers and G.I. Joe. There's something serious about Robotech that I didn't quite understand. There was something awesome about it. I was really into, astronomy, and I was really into planets and science fiction and stuff like that. So I love Star Trek and Star Wars, and Robotech fit right in with that. Because it all took place in like outer space. There were aliens and stuff like that. And I could not get enough of Robotech. It messed me up so deeply. Like, I fell in love with it. And that's what got me into Gundam. Because the first time in the year 2000, I was 9 years old when I was watching Cartoon Network, and I saw that commercial for Toonami, for Gundam Wing, promoting Gundam Wing. I was like, that looks just like Robotech. Because in between then and then, I had never really watched another giant robot anime. And so when I realized that Gundam was like Robotech, and I ended up, of course, liking Gundam, 3 billion times more, that set me up for just an array of stuff that I realized I didn't think was important until I watched this stuff. As far as the dialogue in the show, the script, the characters, their emotions, like I got so invested in the anime and the franchise, even the music, like everything to the T. It helped define what I love in entertainment, what I value in entertainment, including the things that I talk about in the podcast: manhood, entrepreneurship, even entertainment. Like the Gundam series, the franchise that has been around since 1979. Like just totally captures all of that. And it just, I don't know, man, I'm obsessed. That's all I can really say. But it was because of my dad, like, and he probably has no idea, but it's because of that. It's because that stupid VHS tape. I am totally into Gundam now and have been for, holy crap, since I was 10. It's been 17 years, and I like it no less I did than I was a kid,
And you have a quote on your website: "You mustn't let mistakes weigh you down, acknowledge them, and take what you've learned to move on. This is the privilege of being a man." And we're not talking Gandhi, Buddha, Shakespeare. I mean, this is a Gundam Unicorn quote from episode 2. So Obviously these things stuck with you and have played a part in you being a man and being a husband and being a father and being a nerd or a fan or a geek or whatever you want to call it, all wrapped up together.
Absolutely. It really has. It's one of those cool things because when I started watching Gundam, for example, like I was 10 years old. Most of the main characters in most of the Gundam franchises, the Gundam like series, the meta series or whatever, they're teenagers. They're 14, 15, 16 years old, 17 years old. And so when I was a kid, that was old to me, And now I'm 27, and Hulu, because Hulu's awesome, just got like 5 different Gundam series. Like on Hulu, they got Gundam Wing, Gundam. They don't have Gundam Unicorn. They have Gundam Wing, Gundam the 08th MS Team, Gundam Seed HD, the remaster, Gundam the Origin, and Gundam. I can't think of it right now, but there are 5. And I was just rewatching Gundam Wing, and I made a tweet a few weeks ago. And it was just because it was a revelation to me. It was like literally everyone in Gundam Wing is either a prophet or a poet. Because the way that they talk is so insane. There is no way 15-year-olds, 16-year-olds talk the way they do. And it's just so meaningful and so passionate because they're in war and they're all like suicidal. And so there's all these really weird things going on in their minds, and they always speak their mind whether someone is there or not. And it's like that kind of stuff that I grew up in, and a beautiful soundtrack that kind of supports that or promotes the sort of emotion that the character is feeling, you know. All that stuff shaped me into a man, and even into what I want my daughter to be involved in as far as entertainment and the things that I want to share with her. Like Gundam is a huge part of that. And so I just love some of the quotes that they say in Gundam. It's stuff that I would never ever hear in any other anime. You know, Gundam just gets me, man. It's crazy. It's crazy.
Justin and I will conclude our conversation in a few seconds. But in the meantime, if you are listening on iTunes, please take a moment to rate and review. Just search for the Fan to Fan podcast, go under reviews, enter a star rating, or write a review if you have a second or two, and click send. That's how easy it is. I will greatly appreciate it. Thanks. And it makes sense because you think like parents sign up their kids for sports, and they're kind of vicariously living through their kids or pushing their passion for whatever it is, baseball, football, soccer. Mm-hmm. It's no different than being a fan of a TV show or a book or what have you. And being a fan is natural. Yeah. Raising a fan, that's the different story. And it's kind of what we were talking about in our emails. Word. So this is the stuff that is important to you. And as you have a 2-year-old that you've started to see what she enjoys. Now, this is where it gets into the interesting parts, like the idea of raising a fan. And this is, we can separate it from how we grew up and how our parents grew up. We have a lot more accessibility now where, like you mentioned, you have Hulu. You could jump on there. Yeah. And if you wanted to watch a ton of the Gundam episodes, you could go back and do that. You're not, going through, like I would have done in my day, every single Suncoast and every single mall to try to find these overpriced $40 to $50 Gundam, let alone Dragon Ball Z tapes with maybe 2 episodes on them. Yep. To bring it back to Robotech, once I discovered the Macross Saga, and I was just like, wow, this is some unbelievable, deep philosophical stuff going on here with war and love and peace and culture and philosophy and just some amazing things that I had never seen in American TV, especially on Saturday morning TV, kind of bringing it back to that. I was just like, man, Snorkel's never dealt with race issues. This is unbelievable. It's like, wow, this is really pushing it to a place where I was at a place to comprehend it. Yeah. Right. So high school, I'm at this place where I'm like, okay, you know what? I understand these things. I'm starting to get to that point where I can process this and realize that something is being said purposely. Right. That there are people behind us who are designing a statement, and they're doing it with giant robots fighting each other, which makes it easy to digest. Right. But nonetheless, something is being said purposely and in a way that resonates, in a way that stuck with me, in ways that obviously stuck with you too. And then now you have your daughter. I have nieces and nephews, and when we take care of our nieces and nephews, and we kind of get them for a day or 2 nights or something, and then it starts becoming my wife and I kind of going through okay, well, let's have a little movie night tonight. Well, what do we watch? Yeah. And I immediately want to go to those staples of my childhood, movies. She's like, oh, let's watch something new like Zootopia or Sing. And I'm like, no, let's throw it back a little bit. Let's go back to like Gremlins. Right. Let's go back to something that we grew up with that, they can get Sing anytime they want. Right. But to go back to something that, it requires a little effort, there's a selfishness in it. Because I want to say, hey, you know what, nephew? Here's Batman the Animated Series. Let's watch this for a little bit. Right. And they might look at me and say, yeah, no, not feeling it. Sorry, sorry, uncle. This isn't it. There's no 3D in this. Things are not moving fast enough here. The people are starting to talk, and they're wearing regular clothes, and now they're sitting down. Oh, no. You got to step this up a little bit. But there's that selfish part of me that says, all right, maybe they'll watch this, they'll appreciate it, and say, oh, you know what? Can we watch another one? And then I feel like, yes, like there's maybe something there that resonated with them, that resonated with me, So now you have a 2-year-old. So all these things are are a little preemptive to talk about. But how is it now when you start thinking about things that that you share with her? It's like the TV that you watch with her. How do you make those choices between you and your wife to say, hey, you know what? I think she's ready to watch this.
Yeah, it's really weird with my daughter because she's such a mimicker, and so if I jump, she jumps. If I squat, she squats. If I hop, she hops, and she is always curious as to what I'm doing. If I'm writing, a blog, if I'm typing a blog on my laptop, she'll just like run up to me, wide-eyed, totally grinning, and just stare at me, into my soul, through my eyes, and then like look at my computer, look at my hands, push me out of the way, and start mimicking what I'm doing, and she'll, try to type the rest of the essay for me. It's so, or the blog for me. And she's just so funny. And so like when it comes to TV and stuff like that, she has seen what I like. She has seen what my wife Allie likes. And honestly, we try very, very hard to keep her away from a lot of the more mature stuff. Sometimes it slips my mind. I'm like watching Luke Cage. I'm thinking, oh, this is comic book stuff. This is fine. I forget that it's rated TVMA, and then all of a sudden someone says a swear word or there's mad violence, and I'm like, whoops, And so I can't be slipping like that, It is strong. It is very important to me that my daughter is, entertained and educated. As far as television goes, I don't want to just sit there and be a zombie so me and mommy can go off and do our own thing. Like, I want her to make sure she's getting something out of whatever it is that she is like watching on Netflix or Hulu or whatever. And if I feel that she can't get that visually, then her and I are going to read a book together. We're going to do something together. But the whole point of her watching TV is very much education as well as fun. And so, sometimes I'll sit her in my lap and we'll watch a few episodes of Gundam Wing because she knows I enjoy it. And so she'll sit there and at least pretend to enjoy it because she knows that that's what I'm doing and she just wants to do what I do. And so I also want to be sure to implant really good memories of things that I enjoy. I don't want to vicariously live through her or put my legacy, shove it down her throat so that she has to like what I like when she grows up. But I want her to have these memories. And so that when she's a teenager or a preteen, she has a variety of things that she can go to. She can sit and think for a second and say, I remember watching this when I grew up. I remember my dad watching this, my mom watching this stuff. And it's all really appropriate for me to digest at the moment. And so I always want my daughter to be around smart TV. I don't know if, I would be okay with just chilling with my daughter and watching something that doesn't provide a lot of insight, into something important. Well, actually, no, that's not really true. Because I think about it, I grew up, like we mentioned Power Rangers, that wasn't the quote unquote smartest thing. It was, teens fighting aliens because a giant ghost head told them to. And that's not
No, but I know what you mean, because my brother-in-law has recently introduced Star Trek to my nephew.
Word,
and
okay.
When you start thinking about, future visions of manhood and what's possible, what's good, what's bad, culture, race relations, philosophy, it's all in there. I mean, there are things in there that expand critical thinking, communication, and it just happens to do it in this pretty entertaining sci-fi landscape. But
right.
There's a lot of stuff in Star Trek that people who are not into Star Trek would and might easily dismiss. But yeah. I see it now in my nephew's conversations where he brings up some examples that he saw in Star Trek. You could tell that things are registering. Things are coming up in his mind and he's processing them. And at 10, 11 years old, he's already thinking, this is interesting how, the way they dealt with this blue race is not so different than the conversations people are having here in the real world about minorities. Yeah, and I wonder what's the parallels. It's just like, you know what, maybe that's enough for those seeds to be planted to expand that thinking so that you're experiencing all of this diversity and culture in the safety of this entertainment, but you still take it with you. Yeah,
absolutely. And I think that's kind of the larger idea. Sometimes I don't really think about it, because sometimes I want to just sit there and just kind of veg out, but for the most part, I do want to take what I see on the TV screen or the Blu-ray or whatever, and I want to be able to apply it to my life and to the real world. I think I've gotten to a point where, it's really easy to kind of sniff out things like that in media. And I do think there's a lot of really good shows out there. Like me and my wife, like we don't have a cable box, so we don't really watch like television. We watch a bunch of streaming stuff. And that kind of helps us because that means our television intake is regulated. We're not just sitting there like, 24 hours a day just watching TV just because we can, and it saves us money.
Sure.
But
so you guys strictly do like Hulu or Netflix?
yeah,
Okay.
Yeah, we do Hulu, and I actually just re-registered for Netflix just to watch Iron Fist, and so I need to cancel my subscription before I have to start paying anything. So for the most part, yeah, we try to limit it. I mean, we have a PlayStation 4 that's basically our streaming box. We used to have an Apple TV, but then we realized like, okay, the PS4 and the Apple TV kind of do the same thing as far as streaming, so let's get rid of one. So we sold the Apple TV. We use the PS4 for stuff like that. And so our brains aren't mindlessly bogged down by, the consumer culture promoted in a bunch of television commercials and stuff like that. I mean, I'm not a conspiracy theorist and stuff like that. I don't care that much. But there is a weight lifted when I can just watch a show that I enjoy of my choosing on my time, instead of paying for, 50% a TV show I may or may not like, and the other 50% is just commercials, the things that I'm probably not going to buy anyway. There's actually a huge weight lifted, and I really, really enjoy that. But as far as like getting something out of TV, out of shows, out of films, and applying it and being able to register that to real life, like you said, race relations and stuff like that, that's the kind of stuff that, I was raised with watching, the X-Men cartoon from the 90s and watching, family dynamics play out in the Spider-Man, cartoon from the 90s and stuff like that. And that I like that stuff a whole lot more because there was a certain darkness, like a gritty, sense of realism to it that I didn't get from G.I. Joe, that I didn't get, even from something like Power Rangers, which sort of deals with issues, but not to the extent even that a lot of, Marvel's, 90s cartoons dealt with, and especially animes like, Robotech and Gundam and blah, 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 blah. And so I want my daughter to grow up knowing that it's okay to surround her stuff, to be surrounded by things like that. It's okay to be a dork, a geek. It's okay to not walk around with labels, even. Like all this stuff, it's okay. I don't want her to think it's only okay to watch this TV show because it's wholesome. It's only okay to watch this because it's about women, because she's a girl, or this because she's a minority, she's half black or whatever. Like, it is what it is. And the more that media and entertainment reflects the real world, the more invested in entertainment I'm going to be. You know what I'm saying? And so I don't want her to be so caught up in this fantasy world of absolute, I don't even know what the word is, but just something that separates herself so much from reality that she goes back to reality and expects it to be like that, because that's just not true. And so I want her to be able to find media, books, comics, anything, that she needs as a form of escape. Just like anime was for me, comic books was that escape for me, and for a lot of it, television was that escape for me. I want my daughter to be able to utilize these platforms in that way if she needs it, when she needs that outlet to express herself positively and healthily, instead of, toxically or poisonously or dangerously. I just want her to know that all this stuff is okay as long as you don't get sucked into it so much that you allow it to define you as a person. Like, Gundam doesn't define me as a person. Star Trek and my love for all these things doesn't define me as a person. And it's not the most important part about me. But it is an important part about me. It's a huge part about me. It's just not everything that there is. And I've seen people kind of go down that route. And a lot of people turned out okay, and a lot of people did not. And I just want, as far as entertainment goes, I just want my daughter to be smart about it, because there is a lot of sick stuff out there. I don't want her to end up, watching music videos to the point where it's like, okay, I have to look like this, model in the background.
Sure.
I have to, look like her. I have to be darker skinned or lighter skinned, or what if she stumbles on something like pornography and is like, oh my gosh, I don't look like that woman. How will any man ever accept me in society? And so there are a lot of dangers with media, with entertainment, that I have the responsibility to teach my daughter to be okay with, while at the same time showing her, like, look, it's okay to be whatever it is that you want to be, and it's okay to, allow television to influence you to express yourself in a certain way, in a certain demeanor. It has certainly done that for me, in so many different ways. It's not like I'm going to watch Gundam Wing, watch one of the characters kill themselves, and then want to go try to kill myself, But again, like I said, like some people have taken it to that level where they let violent video games determine their course of action. They'll play a first-person shooter and realize, I want to go shoot up a school, or they'll, do this or do that. And that seems super hyperbolic, but it happens all the time. And that scares me to think that media, that entertainment has that much power. And so, like you said at the beginning, like parents have such a huge responsibility as well. And that power is really frightening because we can lead our kids astray. We can lead our cousins and nephews astray if we're not careful. And so, like I said, my daughter's only 2, and she mimics what I watch. She mimics me. She sees what I enjoy. And I just got to be careful with these sort of things because I want her to have those memories, to go back to these memories of, me and daddy watching this and that and growing up with this, and I recognize this theme song and this, kind of like what happened with me and my dad watching that VHS tape. But again, we just got to be careful that we don't take it too far, that my daughter is not like so much a pushover, as she is an independent woman who will consider her own course of action to be influenced by whatever she wants it to be influenced by, not by everything that she sees or every commercial she stumbles upon or whatever, if that makes sense,
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, and you figure maybe when she's at that point where she's ready, she'll have her own podcast. And she'll be talking about the shows that she was watching with daddy and start talking about, how back in the day they had this thing called Hulu and Netflix, and it's so archaic that you had to go to the screen to watch it when you just can't bring it up in front of you on some sort of, virtual reality hologram display device. And then on that podcast, which will probably just beam into, people's brains directly anyway, she can start humming the theme song to Gummy Bears 2099 or something like that. It's all full circle. No. It's all fatherhood. It's all manhood. It's all about being a husband. It's all about being a fan.
Absolutely, and I'm honored to call myself a fan. I'm proud to say that my parents helped me influence that, and I really hope that I can stand there and say, like, I'm really happy at what my daughter loves, what she talks about, and to know that I helped influence that. Like, bro, like as a parent, that is such a massive power. It's such a massive responsibility to protect and love my daughter in that way. That is just such a cool responsibility that us as parents, whatever guardians, uncles, aunties that we have for the next generation. It's just because media is going to be a part of their lives, whether we want it to be or not. That's just the way it is.
Exactly. Yep.
And so, we have the power to plant some positive seeds in their lives, and I can only pray that I'm doing right by my kid and watching what we watch together and, exposing her to what I grew up with, the cool stuff that helps define her father as a man today,
There you go. And you can listen to Justin talk about those things at www.super-tangent.com. You can find the podcast on iTunes, Google Play, Stitcher. You're on the entire social media suite, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, Pinterest. You're all over the place as a fellow marketer. I appreciate that. There is effort. There is purpose in what you do. No doubt. So I appreciate what you're doing.
Thank you.
I appreciate what you're talking about, Justin. So please keep on keeping on.
Show. Absolutely. And thank you for having me on your show, man. Like, it's been a blast. I think this is the first time I've been a guest on another podcast. So this is actually like really dope for me. It's like a milestone. I'm super, super excited about it. I'm really glad technology didn't like ruin our day. The Matrix was still plugged in. Skynet didn't activate. Like, everything is cool, you know, so.
No, Skynet's on vacation. So Skynet, wherever you're at, kick back, relax.
Right.
You know, let us do our thing right now. We're doing good.
Skynet, we got this.
That's it for this episode. Tune in next time for more fan-to-fan conversations on the Fan-to-Fan podcast. Thanks for listening.
For 2 million years in these subterranean caves, a creature of superhuman evil was entombed in a wall of ice, waiting to be free, waiting to live again.